Hi, Learn 11 class. Welcome to the first part of the Active Listening and Communication lecture. For this lecture, you're going to need to have a piece of paper to take notes, or a couple pieces of paper to take notes, and also a piece of paper that you can do the warm-up activity on. It'll take a few minutes. And then also, please open the Julian Treasure video that is in that's in the listening module on the on Canvas on our homepage. It's a video that I've posted for this week separately from the lecture. So if you could pull that up, because you'll need that in a few minutes. All right. So welcome to the lecture. I already recorded this lecture, and something happened to the files, so I'm re-recording now. I apologize if I make mention of this lecture in my next lecture. I'm going to see if I can do this even more quickly and more succinctly. This slide is just going over what we spoke about in the week when we talked about the learning types. The different learning types 1 through 4, watchers and doers. We talked about how teachers teach according to their learning preferences. And so that gives us the opportunity to learn how to stretch ourselves in order to compromise on different and new and creative ways to learn and teach ourselves. This slide is the week's objectives. So again, remember that these slides are helpful when you are preparing to study for any exams. These are the things that I hope or that I've set out for you to learn in this lecture. You can pull out your piece of paper now and write down responses to these two questions. What do you hope to learn about listening this week, and what challenges do you foresee with strengthening your listening skills? By that I mean, what challenges might you have with listening fully, with paying attention, with communicating verbally or non-verbally? Go ahead and pause this video and answer those questions, and I'll see you in a few minutes. Okay, welcome back. I'm not going to see you, but you will hear me. I'm glad that you did your warm-up. That is to help you get in touch with what you already do know about listening, and also you've just set an intention, whether you realized it or not, for what you want to learn in this lecture, or what challenges you hope to solve, or at least learn new methods to practice or try out. Okay, now before you begin the video, it's about a 7-minute video. Before you begin that video, see if you can take notes of what Julian Treasure is saying. One, he talks about the reasons why we're losing our listening skills. See if you can take really good detailed notes on that. And the second part, he talks about, or he offers us some tools that we can practice in order to strengthen our listening. So see if you can take some really detailed notes on that. This is good practice moving into our note-taking lecture, especially since he's speaking pretty fast. You can pause this video and watch Julian Treasure now. Okay, welcome back. Hopefully you watched the video by Julian Treasure. You will need to be familiar with all the main ideas in this video because it may show up on the test. Okay. So Treasure's gives us reasons for why we're losing our listening. Let's see how many you were able to write down as you took notes. One of the reasons that he talks about, that he discusses, is how noisy the world is, and how we are used to a noisy, chaotic world and life, and or many of us are. I shouldn't say we all are, but many people are just exhausted by the time it comes down to having a conversation or being able to listen. If you're a parent, I imagine coming home after work and after school and trying to listen to the concerns or questions or just connect with your children has got to be very challenging at times in any kind of relationship. But if we're working and we're going to classes, it can also be really difficult to listen to a lecture with all of our focus if we have not had time to just rest and not been either listening to music or podcasts or watching TV or listening to the news or going on social media. Also with technology, there is the disconnection. We have a disconnect where we may feel like we have all the means to connect with people, and yet we are uncomfortable in conversation, or we don't know how to hold conversation. One really clear point of knowing that our conversation and listening skills are or need work is when we're unable to say no, when we're unable to hear no from others and we're unable to say no to others. That can be really challenging and also a message to us that we may need to tap in to our communication skills and strengthen those. And then with public spaces, he gives the example of us, in an airport with headphones in, and we are listening to music, and what we've done is created our own private space. And I also think behind TVs and behind computer screens and phone screens, tablet screens, this is also a way for us to create our own private space and not interact with others or listen very well. And so there used to be a time, Treasure says, when rhetoric or conversation, speeches, this was prized. This was a prized skill. And now we are losing the ability to do that, as well as the respect that we had once for the art of communication. And then lastly, he says that we've become desensitized, that we literally need headlines to scream at us these really terrible, buzzwords, and before we recognize that something's even happening. And if we take that into our interpersonal skills or our communication skills with classmates or teachers, employers, we see that oftentimes there is something where we're behind a screen and we're not listening and we're not interacting. And when we're losing the skills to be able to connect to one another and really listen and share what's going on for us and our belief systems, that type of thing, it can cause anxiety. It can cause anxiety to have to learn how to do that. And so when we feel anxiety, many people take anxiety as a cue that they're doing something wrong, or that they're feeling the discomfort, so they don't want to move forward. And actually, it's a really good sign that something is changing and that we're learning and growing. So I put here a couple of funny memes. I'll give you a chance to read those in a second. I'll get quiet here. But this is just to show you the types of humor and jokes and advertising and things that are going on around us that have to do with feeling awkward in conversation with others, in feeling as though we are unable to say what we mean when we mean it, that there's something fundamentally awkward or strange about us, when really what it comes down to is many times an inability to be with discomfort, an inability to open and to listen to others. When there is no agenda, when there is nothing we want, we're simply listening to listen because we're connecting with other people. And actually, connection is what lowers our anxiety. And yet our anxiety is what keeps us from connecting. So there's a little bit of a puzzle for you. I often feel awkward. I'm not comfortable with small talk. And I feel the need to do it with people I don't know. And it's really difficult for me to not feel awkward. And, I feel awkward and also I just do it. So when I can have these conversations over values and deeper curiosity, I'm really grateful. And when I have to have just those brief interactions with people, whether it's an employer or an acquaintance, I bear through it just like everybody else does. Okay. The next slide is I listed the solutions that Treasure gives us in his video. See if you got all of the notes from the video, all of his solutions. So the first one he talks about, or he offers us this idea of sitting in silence for 3 minutes a day. And he says if you don't have silence, quiet is good enough. And he says that silence sort of re-energizes our brain or recharges us and restores us back to balance so that we can listen more intently. He offers us the mixer. It's a practice of going to a space where there's more than one sound and picking apart each sound individually. Sorry, there's a car outside my place. I don't know if you can hear that, but it is distracting. And then we go to this place with many noises and we count the noises and we separate them individually and appreciate them. Savoring is a practice, where we enjoy or open ourselves to mundane noises. So I did this practice with the leaf blower and the lawnmower a couple of times around my house, and those are two sounds that I don't especially enjoy. But this practice allowed me to open fully, to be uncomfortable, and to listen to what I'm usually unwilling to listen to. The fourth one is called listening position. This is where Julian Treasure gives us or invites us to try this practice of listening from different perspectives or different points of view. So, for instance, if you're a political person, you're used to listening to, whatever party you're associated with. You're used to listening to reasoning from that party. Listening positions allows you to listen from the other, your opponent's perspective, but not just the opponent, who's affected by these arguments that we're making, listening from their perspective as well. Several times in my schooling, I had to create presentations where I argued on the opposite side of my own argument. And I had to write a paper in college where I had to argue myself. And it was a really great exercise. The things that come out of it, the learning that came out of it for me was not only strengthening my own argument because I could see from someone else's perspective. I could see how someone might argue me, but it really allowed me to understand why others see things the way that they do. I'll never share certain experiences, but I can understand from their perspective why they would have reasoning the way that they do. Another benefit of these exercises is that it really taught me empathy, and it filled me with empathy and compassion for others, to, at the very least, understanding for others. All right, rasa is a practice that you're going to do for your reflection this week. And it's a really great exercise. A lot of my students enjoy it because it helps them to see a different way of communicating than they have in the past. Some people have practiced this. I will say that in a counseling appointment, something like this small practice could be, a very expensive appointment with a professional to teach two people how to communicate and listen to one another this way. So rasa is an acronym, okay? And the R in rasa means to receive fully, to receive the message without judgment, without planning our responses, without criticism, just fully listening to what somebody is saying. And we can also be listening for what somebody isn't saying, and that's really helpful too. The A in rasa the first A is appreciate. So we want to acknowledge somehow with body language or verbally that we are listening and we're focused on what our partner is saying. And then once we do that, after they're finished speaking and they have said all there is to say, we try and summarize what they have said. How we begin this phrasing to our partner or the person we're practicing rasa with. We begin by saying, what I heard you say was. Okay? It's really powerful because it's letting the other person know that we're not assuming that we heard them correctly or that we heard everything. But I'm going to take the time to tell you what I did hear. Okay? And then we offer them, we allow them to correct us or add information to help us to really listen again for the details of what they said if we missed anything. And then we summarize again. Okay, this time what I heard you say was. Okay? And we do this until we get it right or until the other person feels that we got everything that they said. And then we ask them a question. We can ask a follow-up question, which, is basically asking for more details. That's the 5W1H model. Or we can ask as a way of just allowing them to continue speaking. Some students have reported that this was an uncomfortable experience because they don't communicate this way with people in their lives. And so the people that they were practicing with were suspicious or were uncomfortable, and so it made them uncomfortable. And I really just encourage you to try it out for yourself. You can let the other person know that you're practicing a communication technique, or you don't have to tell them at all, and you can just see firsthand the ways that this brings out different parts of ourselves and others.